Hello, I'm Somi Arian. I'm a tech philosopher and the founder of Impeak. My guest on today's podcast is Josie Bellini, CEO and creator of CyberBrokers, a series of 10K NFT collectibles that provide membership and access to metaversal experiences. As a cyberbroker holder myself, I've been a big fan of Josie for quite some time, and it was a real pleasure to speak to her after all this time. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope you do too. When I look at when I look at your work, Josie, and when I look at the your background and everything that you've done, there are three things that really stand out for me. There's the fact that you have that background in finance. Then you have the fact that you actually got into creating the art physically, and we can talk a little bit about that. And then there's the storytelling. So first things first, let's start with the art. So I remember listening to your podcast interview with Kevin Rose, and you were telling the story of how you created these art pieces. So what's your project? What's your process with the art? And and then we can, so because you talked about the fact that you started creating crypto art, but obviously did you always know that you were an artist because you come from that finance background?
Yeah, it's funny because growing up, I was always really creative. I loved art. Art classes were my favorite. In high school, I ditched all of my gym classes and was in the wheel throwing room and doing pottery. Like I've always been creative and loved that aspect. Also, having to be extremely independent at a very young age, I knew when I went to college and I was putting myself through college, which I almost didn't go, by the way, but because I thought, oh, I'll just work and I can make more money working and not going to school, because I was in that, survival and hustle mode for so long. So when I decided to go to college, I was like, I need a career that I can be successful and make a lot of money in. That was my objective. So I studied finance in school and business, and got a job in private wealth management after graduating. I learned so much in that field, the good and the bad, and I'm very, very thankful I studied it. It definitely wasn't like I didn't study it because it was my passion and it was like a career that I wanted to be in for the rest of my life, but I was determined to make it work and be in that career to make money. So it was really interesting to take that path, do that major, and then work in the field. And like I said, I did learn so much that has actually been really applicable to all of the other things I continue to do. So I stopped doing art for a while. I did some things on the side, like I minored in digital media design and like taking art classes just for fun when I could. And then really, I sort of put a lot of my art to the side for a little while after college until I found crypto. And then I started getting back into art because I wanted a way to describe my journey and all these things I've learned. And it had taken over so much of my life in such a good way. And I had found a community that I never found before. And I wanted to get that out creatively. So that's how I like crypto brought art back into my life, and it actually made me an artist. I'd always done it on the side and never taken it seriously, but because other people started taking it seriously, it gave me that opportunity to make it my full-time career.
Amazing. So you did tell the story. Maybe you can repeat it. How you were uh, trying to sell these physical pieces of art, and the most fascinating part was when the Reddit story, and how how people started reacting to your art. How did that feel? So tell the story for people who haven't heard, and then how did it feel at a time to suddenly get this incredible amount of recognition and reaction to your art.
Yeah. So also part of that story that I left out before that I'll mention here, because it's funny, but it's the sad part of the story. So when I created this artwork that I named Genesis, my first piece of crypto art, with a woman with a bear mask with bull horns, bear and bull market, and she's looking upwards. It was in 2017, like the height of crypto at that time, ton of scams, all the ICO phase, like It was a really crazy time, but I made a piece with this woman with a bull and bear mask. And in the background, everything is made with recycled paper and ink and paint. And the background has the current logos of all the top cryptocurrencies at that time. So just from CoinMarketCap, I scraped the top ones and painted them in, knowing, of course, that some of the ones I was painting in were total scams. Like BitConnect is on there, like all of these ones that now looking back, I can't even remember half of the names because they've been gone for so many years. But it was important to me to include all of those because I wanted it to be a timestamp. I wanted it to represent what the market was at that point in time, but also having the knowledge of the traditional financial markets and knowing about bull and bear cycles and that we were in a huge bull and obviously that couldn't last forever, and sort of like tying in some of those themes and knowledge that I had just had coming into the space. So I created that piece of art. And, at the time, both me and my boyfriend, who's now my husband, we were obsessing over crypto together. We were going to meetups, hosting meetups in Chicago, going to every single thing we could and meeting everyone that we could. So we knew like r/cryptocurrency was the place to be at that time, which is a channel on Reddit, a sub-channel on Reddit. And so he was like, you need to post this artwork on r/cryptocurrency, just see what people think. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, let me figure out how. And I had no karma points to do it because I didn't have a Reddit account. I had like no Twitter, no Instagram, like I wasn't a social media person. So he ended up posting it for me and it got so many upvotes that it was the top post for 2 days straight, which is not common to happen on Reddit, and especially not r/cryptocurrency because it was super busy those days. And so it stayed at the top. It had, a couple thousand upvotes, a ton of comments. Like everyone was asking, how can I get a print of this? Like how, like, this is amazing, asking more about the art. Like, and I was so overwhelmed because it was the first time. A lot of my art in the past was all just personal. And this was also personal. It wasn't something that I was sharing with the world. And to have this on display, and for so many people in this community that we had this shared ethos and bond through owning cryptocurrency, because the community has changed a lot now versus what it was then. But like, we felt like we were a part of this, like, financial freedom movement. Like it was very different. So like having those people recognize my art and love my art and want my art was really, really powerful. So anyways, the part of the story that I'm never told that is a huge bummer is that later on, so I think it was a couple years after, so my boyfriend and I at the time, and later, like I said, husband, we decided that we wanted to stay private about our relationship. Everyone in Chicago knew we were together, but like we weren't going to blast it and promote it on Twitter because we both had our own businesses and we wanted to be successful on our own and not have so much commingling of like, oh, let me introduce you to this person and this person. Like we really wanted to build our own brands and our own companies. So because of that, the trail led back to him posting my art on Reddit. And we deleted it. And I'm so sad we did because it would have been such a nice post to like go back to, but I'll have to figure
no
out.
screenshot?
I know. I don't know. I don't have that computer. I lost my first wallet with like all my crypto kitties in it. Like I just don't have that anymore. So maybe there's some like, when you can look at the old versions of websites, maybe someone can help me one day to find the post, but I'm really sad that it's not still there.
Oh, wow. That is amazing.
It was a bad choice. It was a bad choice, but it is what it is.
Wow, that's fascinating. So, okay, I have so many questions. So let's talk a little bit about the community, the nature of the community changing. This is something that I have noticed quite a lot. For example, when I went into Proof, I came into Proof after Moonbirds. And so there were like a couple of weeks or so, 3 or 4 weeks after Moonbirds. So there was already people there. There were already people there who were there for, maybe 7 months. And that was my first experience of going into a community where there were people for that long and tight-knit community, quite high end. And I noticed that there was quite a lot of nostalgia for the early days of what it was like, right? And as
Mhm.
new people came in, it changed the nature of the community. And you mentioned this as well. You said that the community has changed because I think you've been in this space longer than me. So maybe you can talk a little bit about how the nature of communities have changed over the past few years, and especially since the beginning of NFTs. You've been there from the very beginning. So there's like the community before NFTs, and then since NFTs have begun, and within your own community.
Yeah, it's really interesting because the communities have changed a lot, and I've also changed a lot. And so there's been a lot of learning and growing and absorbing and working together. That there's a lot of really beautiful things that the community um, has changed too, but there's also some things that, like you said, like I'm nostalgic to. Like for example, when I first got into crypto, before NFTs or anything like that, I was, like I said, going to these meetups and people were mining Bitcoin like in their basements, and they were a lot of them were developers or biohackers or people who were not necessarily in support of the government and wanting to really have their own freedom and living off the grid. Like there were a lot of those like core life decisions that they made, and crypto was a means that they could transact and live their life in a way that could suit their livelihood, their beliefs, the ethos that they had adopted. So that still exists. Like that's not like, oh, that's gone. But I definitely, it was really interesting time where I could learn from those people and why Bitcoin especially meant so much to them, and why it meant so much to Venezuela and like all of these areas where this currency was really a life decision, and like I said, represented financial freedom for a lot of people. And then later learning about Ethereum and how you could really code and do more dynamic things with Ethereum, and it wasn't meant to just be a currency. That taught me a lot of things. In the beginning, it was really tough to balance both worlds because I was creating Bitcoin art and Ethereum art. Because I had a lot of people on the Bitcoin side who hated Ethereum and still do. But for me, like I really love both of those communities still. Like I love them both, and I've created art pieces that I have a piece called Forward Together, and it's a Bitcoin and Ethereum woman. They look opposite, but they look similar. And I try to encapsulate what both of those communities are separately, but the name of the piece is Forward Together, because I think that the communities together, they're doing different things, but they both have a purpose and they both have a lot of importance. So it's different. I don't want to say that it's bad. Like there's a lot of nostalgia definitely, and just really amazing memories from early days, but it's also really amazing to be in a community that is growing and that's being adopted, and people are challenging different things and trying to think of innovative ways to fix some of the things that are broken, even outside of crypto within the traditional world. So it's exciting, and I love, I'm all for the growth of this community. And guess what? It's going to get a lot bigger. So if you're not for that, then, sadly, you might be left behind.
So the whole idea of the community growing bigger is something that I have seen some resistance towards. The people who have been there from the beginning, they often don't necessarily like things to change, and like have new people come in. And this is both the case in NFT communities and also in the broader crypto community. For example, right now, I know that there's quite a lot of resistance towards the Solana ecosystem, because we are like, okay, Bitcoin, then so the Bitcoiners don't like Ethereum, then the Ethereum people don't like Solana, right? Like,
Yep.
and there's ideological reasons behind it. There is, all of that stuff is understandable, but at the same time, it's the nature of evolution, and the space is going to evolve. So I personally try to keep an open mind to that. So let's talk a little bit about the cyber brokers community itself changing. How do you deal with, as you know, as somebody who created the art and built a community around it, how do you deal with people leaving, like when people sell, for various reasons? We just released our Genesis token for a very small community like 2 weeks ago, and in the beginning I was like quite obsessive about people not selling, and of course we have 90% unique users, because we or holders, because we made it really difficult for people to do more than one, and it was going to be one per wallet connected to your Twitter, etc. But still, a few people managed to do a few more than that. But for example, when I found out that somebody that I knew sold their token, I was a little bit heartbroken about it. And how do you deal with that?
Yeah, it's something that I've been dealing with when I, first started doing NFTs, right? Like it's interesting because the people who are collecting my physical art, I couldn't even give my NFTs away for free to them. They were not interested. And a lot of these people were Bitcoin maxi and like not interested, or even if they were curious about Ethereum, didn't know enough. Like the NFTs wasn't always the thing in Ethereum, right? Like there was Ethereum before that. It took it's interesting because CyberBrokers is not typical in that there's a lot of my art collectors and art collectors in this project that wouldn't traditionally be in like a 10K collection project, which is quite nice to have them. And they've told me that this is the first collection like this that they've been in, which is really special. But I've had to deal with that since the beginning. And here's my thoughts. First of all, trading is good for the market and it's always going to happen and you can't stop it from happening. I think of it in a lot of ways. I try to think of it positively. In the beginning, like the first sales, I was like, oh, well, why did they sell it? Like, did they not like it? Did they blah, blah, blah? And then I started to see some of my users who or collectors who had held for so long when I gave my NFTs away for free and then later sold for, like in some cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it's life changing for them. I am so happy that I was able to create something that you loved and connected with. And now you're taking that, you're trading it, and you are able to do something life changing in your life. Right. So there's that aspect to it of like, even some people in my community, this was the first NFT they ever collected. And with the mint price, at the mint price, they got in and then it went up and they sold and they were able to buy more NFTs or buy a car or whatever they wanted. Like that's amazing to me. I completely accept all of that. And I think you treat all of your collectors, no matter how long they're with you, with respect. And I'll tell you that even today, someone just tweeted that they came back to our community after they sold a while ago. So I think it's okay. Trading's a part of the market. I definitely encourage everyone to get to know their communities and their collectors, because then it is quite special. Even if they do need to sell for some reason, you never know what's going on in someone's life, or they just decide to sell for whatever reason. Like having that connection with them, often they come back. Or they have made amazing friends and they have a really good experience with your community. So give that to them while they're there.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you. I think when you first start building a community, it does feel very personal.
Of
But
course, because it's your baby.
yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah.
our mint price was only 0.1, and then some people sold at 155 in this bear market. And
Mhm.
and in this bear market, the fact that it went up to 15 times, above the mint price, and some people managed to sell it at that price, then like you say, I just think maybe they needed the money, maybe like
Yeah.
whatever, for whatever reason they minted. But I think as a founder, part of the reason why it kind of hurts is because you know what you're building, and
Yeah.
you know that like I know that these tokens are going to be worth so much more as we continue to build this brand, and the kind of access that we're going to give people, the kind of opportunities that we're going to unlock for them.
Right.
And when that happens, then that, right? And like,
Yeah.
oh, damn, I can't believe it, like,
But
it's
you should also think about it the other way of now you're welcoming someone new into your community that
exactly.
really wants to be there.
Exactly.
So that's like, you're almost touching more people in that way. You've given someone who's really positive about your token because they've gotten a great return, and you're getting someone who really wants to be in your community.
Yes.
And you can impress that upon the new person,
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I really love it. So when you look at the NFT space right now, there are so many overlaps, like there's so many 10K collections, and there's a lot of overlap. So a lot of people who have one of these have got others. I know that it's very hard to know exactly how many people are in the space because people have multiple wallets. But from your kind of like bird's eye view, when you look at the space, how big do you think the space is?
Oh, right now, I mean, at least in comparison, it's tiny to what it's going to be. Like tiny. Like this stat is probably 100% wrong, and I'm totally probably remembering this wrong, but I think daily active on OpenSea is like 40,000 wallets or something. Or maybe that's not daily. I have to look, but anyways, it's tiny. Like there's like, when you look at other markets like IP or gaming or all these markets that are like literally trillions of dollars, our space and the community is so small. It's NFTs, especially, I believe, are going to touch every aspect of our digital lives, and our lives are becoming more and more digital every day. No matter who you are, you're glued to the phone for at least, or a computer or screen or whatever, for at least 8 hours a day. When you wake up in the morning, what do? You look at your phone. Like our digital life is just increasing consistently, and digital ownership will be part of that, which means NFTs.
I couldn't agree more. Since I've gotten into NFTs, I don't think I've bought a single luxury item.
Really?
Yeah,
That's interesting.
when I used to, a lot of times, like before going to bed, I like to kind of like look at something on my iPad, maybe read something, or if I need to order something. I think part of it might be because of the pandemic, because we haven't been wearing stuff as much and going. But I remember like looking at Net-a-Porter was like my part of
Yeah.
like my routine, right? Like it was like at nighttime when I was going to bed, I was like, oh, let's look at what's new on Net-a-Porter. But now it's looking at OpenSea.
Well, because think about it, it's also, and I've known this from the very beginning, it's easier for people to spend Ethereum than it is for them to spend dollars. Like we still have like spending, which like, it's funny because a lot of people in the NFT space, and probably because it's male dominated, would be like spending $2,500 on a bag. That's absurd. That's crazy. I would never do that. And then they're dropping like $10,000 here, $20,000 here, like on a, JPEG or, this, obviously it totally depends on what it is, but it's such a different experience, interacting with crypto and interacting with US dollars or currency.
Yeah, I remember, it always reminds me of, so I grew up in Iran. I was born and brought up in Iran. And then when I was 21, I was working for European embassies in Tehran, and I got a visa for the first time to visit Europe. And I remember when I went to Germany the first time, the currency that I took with me, the money that I took with me, when just walking around, at first it was so difficult because I was constantly thinking, oh, this bar of chocolate, oh my God, in my money, like it's gonna be so much more. Like I kept doing the calculation. And then after a few days, once I got used to it, I was like thinking just in I can't remember what the money was at the time in Germany. I don't think euro was yet introduced, or may have been early days, but it was like I was thinking constantly that at first it was very hard. You were constantly thinking, oh, this many euro, this many ETH, or this means this much, in dollars. But once you get used to ETH, and once you start to also earn in ETH to some degree,
Yep.
that's another thing, right? It's kind of like
Totally.
earning in a, yeah. So what are your thoughts on the Solana ecosystem as somebody who is like an Ethereum OG? How, when you look at, how these new ecosystems are evolving, and the user base is very different.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't know enough and I need to learn more. It's funny, I went to Lollapalooza, which is like a music festival in Chicago, a couple months ago, and there was like a Solana booth, and like we walked through it, and they had some like screens with art and a place where you could scan and get a free NFT. I didn't scan, but I went to go check it out, and obviously those sorts of like festivals are much younger crowd. So it's really interesting to see. I obviously have heard a lot about the success of Solana, but I haven't interacted with it enough. So I don't want to speak like on it since I don't know a ton, but I'm not against any of the other chains. Like I think that they all serve different purposes, and what is best for that purpose like will prevail, you know what I mean? And like we have I've recently seen a lot of art pop up on like in the Tezos community that is a lot more approachable than some of the platforms that are just selling art that's on Ethereum. I think that's an amazing way for an artist or just a creator to be able to release their art and their creation to a different user base and see how that goes and experiment a bit. So I think all of it is great as long as the platform has good intent and is doing the right thing. Of course, I know a lot of people are skeptical and worried because we have dealt with a lot of things that are outright scams or end up failing, and then you're left with NFTs that are empty and you have no image or no volume, like, and they're gone, right? So I do understand some people's reservations on wanting to stick with the most popular chain to protect their assets, but it's just a lot of research that needs to go behind that. And like I said, a lot of these other chains have lower priced items, which is go support someone, go try it out.
Yeah. So it's good to know that you're keeping an open mind to that, because I'm exploring because we are an educational platform. For us, it shouldn't really matter what people which chain people want to use to buy a membership token to, right? And I brought it up on our Discord, and it was interesting to see there were like different reactions, different thoughts on that. So it's good to hear that. So going back to when we were having our mint, I was working with Posti, who is one of your
Oh, no
members.
way.
She's actually in our community. We gave her a scholarship to our we gave her a Genesis pass as a scholarship because she missed the mint, and then it became too expensive, and I really liked her, and I wanted to have her in our community because she's studying, educating, and I think she would be a great person. We are actually giving another scholarship to your community, so we're picking another person that
Oh, very cool.
people have been applying for a scholarship from your community. So
Oh, that's amazing.
so when I came into the Discord, I was talking to people there in your Discord. I noticed that people were so friendly with each other. Like they were, it was one of the kind of friendliest Discord channels that I had seen. I never noticed from going there so many times, I never noticed any kind of animosity, any kind of like people being angry with each other. Maybe I didn't spend enough time, but that's what I noticed. And I asked people, how come you guys like each other so much? Like they were like so friendly. And they said that it was because they did quests together, and as they went after these quests and trying to figure them out, they started they created teamwork and they became like brothers and sisters. So tell me a little bit more about this quest thing and how you how did you go about building a community, because you were in finance and then you figured out that you were an artist.
Yeah, a lot of the community building for me was when first started selling crypto art, and I was going to these conferences and meeting collectors and chatting with them even before they became collectors, just people at these conferences and getting to know them and why they were interested. That always stuck with me, and it was really important. It's also why really early on I made a decision that I wasn't going to sell my art on art specific platforms, that I was going to make my own contract and sell on OpenSea. So, by the way, I'm very good friends with Super Rare. They have some of our DGen balloons in the collection are super rare, but I decided to never sell on like a Super Rare or some of these platforms really early on. Later, I changed some of that, but it's because I knew the power of directly connecting with my collector myself and not having that middleman in there. And so that's how I learned really early on how powerful that deep connection was, being able to see them at a conference or chat with them in a Discord or directly have them collect from me. And so I brought that over to CyberBrokers and to this ecosystem. I was really lucky that I already had a collector base that knew me personally, that was really excited about CyberBrokers. And we're also extremely welcoming to new people that join us, even people that sell, like, and are, in the channel saying, I have to sell this for whatever reason, or I'm just selling this. Like, we don't sell shame. We don't do any of those things that, in my opinion, aren't positive and just like bringing the community forward, because what's the point? We want to uplift and build everyone together. So I think we've been really fortunate that we have an amazing base of people who really, they collected CyberBrokers because, number one, they knew me and believed in what I was building and wanted to support me, or they saw the art. They didn't know who I was, but they saw the art and really connected with it. And that's why they wanted to collect. I really don't think we had a ton of people who are only collecting to flip and who are going to be pissed if you don't do an announcement every day. Like, we just from the start had a different like basis, but also within our chat, like recently we started once a week, we have like game night and we play games to like literal games just on the internet, like Among Us we've been playing lately. We play Among Us together. We do these quests together. We have an AI bot where we give each other feedback on some of the inputs that we're doing on how to like do seed sculpting and get a better output, how to edit the images afterwards to make it look like a movie poster. Like, it's a very creative and like really supportive community, and anyone that comes in, they see that and they want to add to that. So obviously that's not a clear answer of why it's like that, but I think that was the foundation to a strong belief I had, and the community continued that and has made it 10 times even better.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that. One of the things that we're doing is, as this business is growing, like for example, we were thinking about doing a free mint, and then we discussed it on the platform on Discord, and then we decided not to do it. And it's like just involving the community in these decisions rather than coming to them and saying, okay, this is what we're going to do, just getting them to be part of that journey. They really love that, and also I think as a founder, it makes you feel less alone, because
Yeah.
you are getting feedback from people, and they are able to give you their input, and that there's not going to be a massive backlash if you come in and say, we're going to do this, and if you involve them from the beginning, it always really helps. Tell me a little bit about, as a founder, how do you deal with the market condition and the price going up and down, and how people feel about the space? Because I'm thinking that is probably something that is reflected, like I can see it a lot in some of the other communities that I'm in, that when the market is down, right? I remember when I first minted my Moonbird, because I was very lucky that I managed to, I won the raffle and I minted it. and like the amount of excitement in the Discord, it was like, yes, we are getting to 20 and we're getting to 30, you know. I was like, and then when the bear market came along, and you know, you also see the exact opposite of that. So how do you feel about how people feel about it, and how do you deal with it as a founder? Do you ever address that? Do you talk to people that, you know, we are in a bear market, things are different?
Yeah, it's always a tough situation. Like, first of all, also at the last point, like I'm always learning. Like, I don't have the answers to everything, and I haven't seen all that's possible with the outcome of each market turn and each thing that happens, like of how the community is going to respond. So it's also really important for me to stay, agile and ears open and listening and being able to change different philosophies I've had that, I've learned maybe aren't the exact way, and be able to mold to be the best founder I can be. But with this, with the market changes, like it's tough for people. And of course, people are going to talk about it because they're seeing their portfolios get cut by 80%, right? Like it's a huge deal, no matter who you are in the space, whether you've invested, $100 or 100,000. Like it's a big deal. So the really, in my opinion, and I think, and I'll say from both, but like in my opinion, I have a different case where I've been through a crypto bear market before. My life is this. I'm not going anywhere. So I also think it's important for communities to look at their founders and look at the company and look at the track record to make sure that they are also involved. And that doesn't mean they have to be OGs and have been here for so long, but just look at what they're speaking about. Look at how they're dealing with this, because us folks that are staying around through this bear and can survive through it will be successful on the other end of it. Like you have to stick through. And I think that's also like something that I'd love to share more with my community. And I think that a lot of them feel it as well, that we have to band together and be positive and stick through it, because on the other side of it, like there's a lot to gain. And right now, it's not just like a crypto bear market. There are a lot of things going on in the traditional world and financial system that is going to be a huge effect on us. And I don't think we're anywhere near the bottoms right now, which is scary, but it's also like you just have to hold on at this point.
I think it's really all about ultimately, you know, people were asking me actually on our Discord, some of the people who were more new, they were like, when do you think this bear market is going to finish? You know, how long is this going to go? And I was like, it could go for another 12 to 18 months. Just, you know, hold off. And then they were like, oh, I've lost so much money from different NFTs. And I was like, you haven't lost the money, because they are, you know, it's an asset that's gone down in price and it can come back, you know? So I was like, as long as those projects actually manage to get through this time, you know, you're going to be fine, and those assets will come back. So you mentioned to me that you have a 9-month-old, and yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey as a woman in this space, and how has that, I have so many questions about that actually. So let's start with being a woman in a space that is, generally speaking, quite male dominated. You know, like we have got a lot of projects that have very little representation of women. I was like looking at doodles the other day. I actually sold my doodle, and I was like looking to pick one up, and I was like looking at the women one, and there's only 2 hairstyle women. You know, like there's only
Really?
2, right?
Wow.
Like, yeah, when you look at the male doodle male hairstyles, there's so many. Like there's like I don't know, 11, 12 different, maybe more than that, hairstyles. Whereas with the female one, there's just 2 hairstyles. There's one that the hair is down, and then there's the 2 little kind of like the what do you call it, the buns, right? The double buns, and that was it. And I was like, this goes to show, you know, this was an early piece of artwork in this space. You know, one of the earlier kind of projects, and it was clearly not made for that kind of representation and diversity. Um, so how did you see your own reception as a female founder, and how did you decide, on the diversity of the artwork?
Sure. The diversity of the artwork was um, not necessarily something that we wrote down on paper, like, oh, we have to make sure the art is diverse. It's something that just naturally we were like, we want people to connect with our art. We love and celebrate our community and the world as a whole. And let's make something that people can see themselves in. So that it just was natural to create art that looks different and doesn't just look a a white person, like whether male or female, like doesn't just look like one person. So that was something that is just like was natural. And even in my previous art, like I always want to celebrate and represent a lot of different cultures and learn about a lot of different cultures myself and figure out how to properly represent everyone. So it was something that was a no-brainer, not something we had to put like a ton of research or thought behind. And being a woman in this space, like it's interesting because I need to find a better way to answer this because I don't know how it comes off. But to be honest, I never think about being a woman unless someone mentions it. Like, and I believe me, I support all women in this space and like more like I know that a lot of people deal with certain struggles, but from being a woman. But for me, and like maybe it also has to do with the way I grew up, but I've seen so many other people around me struggle for so many deep reasons beyond gender that I've never seen being a woman as like I had like a barrier because of that, even coming from finance. And yes, I was one of the only women on my team, but it never clicked in my head that was a way that I was set back from other people, because there were so many other people that were set back for so many bigger reasons, in my opinion, than gender. So I think being a woman in this space for me has been great. Like I don't regularly think about it. So I need a better way to answer it because I don't know if
I
that
think
comes
no,
off
it
in a
makes
bad way.
sense. I actually, I think it makes sense. I think, like I don't wake up in the morning thinking I'm a female founder. I'm a founder, and I'm
Hmm.
building something. But there are statistics, and that speak for themselves. There's
Yeah.
the statistics of, the representation. There's the statistics of the investment. There's like all of these things are, are a reality. But ultimately, I think that if you don't think about it and you just keep building, people will notice you, and you find your own tribe, right?
Yeah.
So
And also on that point, really quick, like I'm not I'm not going to buy into a collection that looks all male. Like I don't connect with it. And it's not that I'm against them. It doesn't pique my
there's no
interest.
representation, yeah.
Yeah. So like it's not even like, oh, I don't like them because of this. I don't even think about it because I can't connect with it. So it's not even on my radar anymore. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah. Like I thought about. I was looking at everybody. DGOT was a rage everywhere, and I want to get Frank on my podcast so that I can specifically talk to him about that. Like in your world there are no goddesses; they're all they're all gods.
Yeah.
But and how about being a mother? So how did that play a role, and how did your community react? Did you explain to them like I'm having a kid? Like
Yeah.
how did that all work out?
So that is something that I do think of that it's there being a woman in some cases of having to bear a child is much harder. Like I had a lot of conversations in my first 5 months. I was really, really sick every single day. And it was a really, really tough pregnancy. And my husband didn't have to go through that. He could run his company, how he ran his company every day since. And I had a huge break in my work and a reason why CyberBrokers launched later than I wanted, because I was throwing up every single day and exhausted and completely wiped out. And it's something that I never expected myself to be like that. Like, you don't know until it happens. And I was like, this is so unfair. Like, I felt resentment and I felt alone. And it wasn't even just like, I didn't want a woman to vent to and talk to me about it and agree. I was just mad that my husband could go on with work and I couldn't, because I wanted to work and I wanted to build and I physically could not. So like, I definitely had a moment where it was really, really tough. And now being a mom and us both being parents now that our son is here, it and I can get back to running my business. It's amazing. It's something I would never change. Like, it's so amazing. And I feel so fortunate to be able to start my family and have a child. But we have a nanny and I thank her and love her every single day, because it's the way that I'm able to continue my work. Because being a full-time mom, a stay-at-home mom, for anyone that doesn't know, is no joke. And it's way more work than working a 9 to 5 or full time. You have to both hands, both eyes on baby all day. And it's isolating for me in some cases, not having that adult interaction. So hats off to every single woman that decides to be a stay-at-home mom, or even just having babies. Like, it's a tough thing to do. And we have help, which like means that I can actually do work.
Look, I really appreciate you being so open and honest about sharing that. I think that's important that is talked about. And I would say that if it's any consolation, I decided not to have children precisely because of that, because I was like, I know myself. I know I can't do it. I can't, right? Like, I have 2 cats and they're already so much
And that's
more.
enough.
That's enough, right?
That's
I
fair.
can't. There is no way I could not possibly have a child and build a business. And this is my second business. I have another business that my team run. And, it's just so much work. And I'm working 15, 16 hours a day, and
Exactly.
like I can't do it. And of course, also, like, I'm an immigrant. I don't have any family around here, like it's like, just,
Yeah.
I can't do it,
Yeah, no, and I believe me, I respect that decision too. And a lot of even planning for our child, like, we had to think in our business minds for a moment to decide, is this the right time? What support do we have? Are we able to afford support? So like, it plays into a much, larger conversation. So
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's why, when sometimes when I have conversations with men that they're like, oh yeah, like, I would love a child. And I'm like, I would have a child as long as you are the one who's bringing you know
yeah,
like I'm happy for everything else, just like, as long as you are gonna do the work, and then
yeah,
that's the end of that conversation.
exactly,
Well,
exactly.
look, I really appreciate your time. This has been such an interesting conversation. Honestly, I really, really enjoyed talking to you. I learned so much. And thank you for sharing your wonderful, wonderful perspective on all of these things.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was really great getting to chat with you, and hopefully we'll chat again soon.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Josie. Be sure to follow her and CyberBrokers on Twitter. If you enjoyed this podcast, be sure to subscribe to it on Apple, Spotify, or any other one of your favorite podcast channels. And don't forget to give the 5-star rating and write a review. The full interviews are also available on my YouTube channel, The Somi Arian Show.